in education with WPBA Channel 30.
Hello, I'm Don Jordan in Berlin with the latest news from Deutsche Welle TV. Russian Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin has condemned a bomb attack in a Moscow cemetery on Sunday. At least 10 people were killed and dozens more injured in the blast.
The bomb went off during a memorial service for former Afghan War Invalids Foundation head Mikhail Likodai at Moscow's Kotyakovskoye Cemetery. Likodai was murdered by a bomb on November the 10th, 1994. Security officials said that Likodai's widow was amongst those killed in Sunday's blast. Authorities believe the bomb attack was linked to ongoing disputes between rival Afghan war veterans organizations.
In Algeria, a car bomb killed at least 10 people and injured 20 more near a school in a suburb of the capital Algiers on Sunday. Security forces described the attack as a criminal act, the official term denoting attacks by Muslim fundamentalists. 50,000 people have been killed since violence erupted in 1992 after the authorities canceled a general election which radical Islamists appeared poised to win. One man was killed and 11 wounded when Israeli soldiers opened fire on Palestinian demonstrators in the West Bank on Sunday. The incident occurred at the village of Deir Kidis near Ramallah, where Palestinians say the Israelis have confiscated 500 hectares for a Jewish settlement.
The 36-year-old man was one of a group of villagers protesting against the confiscations. He was killed when troops fired live rounds and tear gas at some 200 Palestinians who were trying to break through an Israeli army cordon.
Israel eased its closure of Palestinian self-rule areas on Sunday, allowing some 8,000 Palestinians to cross from the northern Gaza Strip to their jobs in the Jewish state. An Israeli army spokesman said Saturday that the relaxation of border controls applies to married Palestinians over the age of 30. The West Bank and Gaza Strip were sealed off in February after a series of suicide bombings by Muslim militants which killed 59 people in Israel.
UN Secretary-General Boutros Ghali has made a renewed appeal for immediate intervention by the international community to help starving refugees in eastern Zaire. Heavy rains have made conditions even worse for the million refugees trapped in the region. Hundreds of thousands are reported to be on the move west of the town of Goma. It's hard to establish exactly where they are because access to the area, which is close to the front line between Tutsi rebels and the Zairean army, is restricted. No food or medicine have reached the refugees for weeks. One medical aid organization estimates that 14,000 people have died already.
A high-level European Union delegation arrived in Kinshasa on Sunday. Government ministers from Ireland, Italy and the Netherlands met with EU Commissioner for Humanitarian Aid, Emma Bonino, to discuss possible solutions to the refugee crisis with the Zairean government. After Saturday's UN Security Council resolution on Zaire, which approved in principle sending a multinational force to ensure aid delivery, but which postponed its deployment, Bonino accused the UN of scandalous indifference to the fate of the refugees.
Germany's Interior Ministry has confirmed a newspaper report that the government keeps detailed computer files on foreigners, even though there is no legal framework to justify such action. The records have been kept since 1983. The government says it's an attempt to document the number of people who acquire German citizenship and those who give it up. The database holds nearly 3 million names. A third of them are naturalized German citizens. The Federal Commissioner for Foreigners, Cornelia Schmalz-Jacobsen, criticizes the program. She says it creates the impression that naturalized Germans are second-class citizens. Germany remembered one of the most tragic events in its history Sunday, the infamous Kristallnacht. 58 years ago, Nazis spread out across Germany, ransacking Jewish shops and vandalizing synagogues. German politicians, Jewish leaders, and citizens marked the anniversary with torchlight processions and memorial services.
Berlin Mayor Eberhard Diepgen and Jewish community leader Jerzy Kanal laid a wreath in memory of victims of the Nazi terror. Afterwards, Canal said Germans must remain vigilant against anti-democracy forces. He also criticized the city government for delaying the expansion of an institute to research the persecution of Jews during the Nazi regime. Mayor Diepken said the delay did not mean Berlin wants to forget the deeds of the Third Reich, as the city is already full of symbolic reminders of the horrors of the Holocaust.
And that concludes this edition of the latest news from Deutsche Welle Television. Stay tuned now for Compact, a review of the week's top stories with Greg Palcott.
Hello and welcome to Compact. I'm Greg Palcott. Among the stories making news this week: winner, U.S. President Clinton gets second term, Republicans control Congress. Success, doctors say Russian President Boris Yeltsin's heart operation went well. Missing, German Chancellor Kohl deals with budget problems as tax revenues fall short. He won again. We're talking about U.S. President Bill Clinton, of course. And for a few moments on Tuesday evening, he celebrated. His victory over Republican challenger Bob Dole made him the first Democratic president to be re-elected since Franklin Roosevelt. His electoral vote margin solid. But it was not all joy in the Clinton camp. His popular vote tally fell short of the hoped for 50% majority. The voter turnout was the lowest in over 70 years. And Congress remains firmly under Republican control. To top it off, Clinton had to quickly deal with the departures of a number of top administration officials, including Secretary of State Christopher, Defense Secretary Perry, and others. That's how Clinton started his first press conference since re-election on Friday.
The first order of business was a change in personnel. The president acknowledged that his chief of staff, Leon Panetta, was leaving to be replaced by longtime friend and associate Erskine Bowles.
I have absolute faith in his ability to do this job. He will bring discipline, focus, and deep values to the work. He will help us finish the job the American people sent us here to do.
In the press conference that followed, Clinton said balancing the budget would get top domestic priority, and that he hoped to work together with the Republican Congress to reform Social Security and Medicare. He was queried on a number of foreign issues as well, admitting that U.S. troops would stay in Bosnia beyond the official December pullout date, and hinting they may take part in an extended mission to keep the peace there.
We would like to see the proposed mission. We would like to see what our contribution would be. I want to assess the risks, as I always do, and the possible benefits, and then I will make a judgment. I took a long look at the I-4 mission. We worked very hard to define it in a way that would guarantee the maximum possibility for success and the minimum possibility of danger to our forces. It has worked very well.
As for prospects of peace in the Mideast, Clinton says he'll use his second term to push for Israel and the Palestinians to uphold existing agreements. Predicting a comprehensive peace hinges on ironing out differences over Hebron. Quoting him, "The first and most important thing we can do is to nail the agreement on Hebron." He says that will open the door to a wider peace. And the president fielded questions on a growing number of investigations involving his administration as well, indicating any honeymoon period ahead of his second term may be short-lived indeed.
Doctors say Sunday Russian President Boris Yeltsin is in satisfactory condition. He is reportedly moving around as much as 2.5 hours a day. Not bad for a 65-year-old who just went through a quintuple bypass heart operation. Yeltsin could be back in the Kremlin in 2 to 3 weeks. Doctors are already allowing him to assume a reduced workload, careful optimism from the experts, compared to exhausted relief after the 7-hour-long procedure on Tuesday.
Chief Surgeon Rinat Akhturin rushed to a press conference on Tuesday afternoon with good news.
The operation went well and was free of any complications.
But not even the president's wife was allowed to see him.
My daughters and I have been waiting since morning to be allowed to visit him just for one moment. The doctors say everything is okay, but we'll probably have to wait until he comes out of the anesthetic.
Shortly before the 7-hour operation began, Yeltsin signed a decree handing over his presidential powers to Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin. But he took back the reins the following morning. Doctors say the greatest danger to the president's health is now stress. Heart patients normally require at least 4 weeks convalescence, but liver problems could delay his recovery. Tuesday morning, before the operation, Yeltsin's spokesman quoted the president as saying he had no intention of staying in the hospital for long. He said he would soon return to the Kremlin.
And now to the story that's been dominating the news for the last few weeks, the crisis in Zaire. Hundreds of thousands of Hutu refugees like these in the East Zairean town of Goma are struggling for any food or medical supplies available. Some are now reportedly leaving Goma to return to Rwanda to get away from fighting between Tutsi rebels and Zairean troops. UN Special Envoy Raymond Chrétien remains in Africa trying to find a solution. He just wrapped up an inconclusive visit to Zaire, and while late reports now say Rwanda is opening its border to allow aid shipments to pass, earlier in the week, Chrétien had a frustrating time there as well.
Time is running out, and UN Special Envoy Raymond Chrétien knows it. The pressure on his Rwanda mission is very high. Shortly before his meeting with Rwandan President Pastor Bizimungu, he explained the urgency of the situation. It wasn't a question of providing help in the next few days. Aid had to come within hours. Nevertheless, the meeting failed to produce any concrete results.
I was pleased, very pleased by the reaction of the government of Rwanda to this effect. I think it is their desire to make sure that the situation remains calm so that the life-sustaining humanitarian aid can get through very quickly. So in my view, it is a positive development.
Chrétien failed to win Rwandan clearance to open the border to allow aid to reach Goma. The Rwandan president also refused to abandon his opposition to an international peacekeeping force. He's especially hostile to the idea of French intervention.
I think that if they were to be involved, the president would complicate matters rather than helping to solve problems.
Humanitarian aid is piling up at the World Food Programme depots. Aid urgently needed by the refugees. Convoys are ready to roll in Uganda, Tanzania, and here in Rwanda.
Inside the country, WFP is keeping some 80,000 ration, a 2-month ration for all the refugees. So with 80,000 ration inside the country, we can manage with all the, with up to 10,000 a day, for 8 days.
The convoys could reach the starving within 24 hours. But the Rwandan government still isn't prepared to allow aid to cross its border on the way to Goma. The old routes via Uganda and Tanzania now pass through the war zone. The journey was dangerous even in more peaceful times. This driver says convoys were often plundered by Zairean soldiers. When someone holds a gun to your head, you do what you're told, he says. But at the moment, no trucks are rolling.
Coming up on Compact, it's reported Helmut Kohl almost quit this week. We'll tell you why. But first, here's a look at some other stories making news around the world.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto has been removed from office by President Farooq Leghari amid allegations of government corruption. The president dissolved the National Assembly, ordered a general election in February, and set up an interim government. Bhutto was put under house arrest but was later freed. She described the charges as baseless and vowed to fight the dismissal in court.
I will definitely go to...
In neighboring India, more than 1,000 people are feared dead in a cyclone which hit the rice bowl state of Andhra Pradesh on the country's southeastern coast on Wednesday night. Some 500,000 homes and farming communities were laid waste by torrential rains, tidal waves, and winds of up to 180 kilometers per hour.
Voters in Romania and Bulgaria rebuffed ex-communists and came out in support of reformist parties in last week's elections. In Romania, the conservative opposition Democratic Convention emerged as the largest single party. But results of the parallel presidential ballot were inconclusive, meaning a runoff will be held next week. In Bulgaria's presidential election, the pro-reform lawyer Petar Stoyanov won a decisive victory over the socialist candidate Ivan Murazov. In elections for the federal Yugoslav parliament, President Slobodan Milosevic and his leftist coalition won by a wide margin.
The U.S. government and FBI have denied claims by a one-time Kennedy White House official that a TWA airliner which crashed off New York in July was hit by friendly fire.
It's a document that I got about 5 weeks ago.
Journalist Pierre Salinger, a former press secretary to John F. Kennedy, claimed the plane was downed by a U.S. Navy missile. Salinger later admitted the document upon which he based his allegations had been on the internet for 2 months. The cause of the crash, in which 230 people died, is still under investigation.
European aircraft maker Airbus clinched one of the biggest deals in aviation history on Wednesday after Pittsburgh-based airline US Air ordered 120 passenger jets. The deal is worth over $5 billion. The first planes are scheduled to be delivered in 1998. Airbus says the deal marks a significant victory over its biggest rival, US-based Boeing.
The European Commission Wednesday forecast that most EU members would meet criteria for joining a single currency. EU Monetary Affairs Commissioner Yves Thibault du Silguy said that only Britain, Italy, and Greece might not qualify. He said they might not be able to bring their deficits down to no more than 3% of gross domestic product in 1997, a key condition for joining.
Helmut Kohl threatened to resign last Tuesday. Bonn sources confirming reports in 2 magazines Sunday. The German chancellor's unusual threat, which would have brought down his 14-year-old government, prompted by squabbling within the ranks of his governing coalition. Junior political partner FDP wants tax cuts soon. The other parties, the CDU and CSU, would rather put off tax cuts as they prepare for European monetary union. Caution perhaps justified on Thursday when a shortfall in tax revenues was announced.
Finance Minister Weigel appeared in good humor as he approached the microphone. An independent panel estimated tax revenue for 1996 would be $3 billion lower than expected, but Weigel says that's already been factored into the government savings program. He says he's still looking for cuts of $2 billion next year.
It means that over the next few weeks, we have to come up with a concrete plan to save 3 billion marks. If we do that, the budget deficit for 1997 will stay below 56.5 billion marks.
The independent panel was made up of finance experts from the federal, state, and municipal levels. A number of businessmen also took part. The panel has adjusted its 1997 tax revenue estimates to about $548 billion. That's about $6.9 billion less than forecast last May. $3.3 billion of that will have to be borne by the federal government. The rest will fall on the state and local level. The ministries have already resigned themselves to another $3 billion in cuts, and Weigel says that's enough. Critics disagree.
I fear that the situation will get worse next year because the budget makes cuts in all the wrong places. This budget will do nothing to combat unemployment. In addition, it approaches research and technology in the wrong way, cutting instead of strengthening it.
I mistrust the situation because one thing is clear in Germany: we aren't recovering yet, and the number of new jobs is virtually zero. But we have to come to terms with this. And if federal tax revenues fall by 5 billion marks, then of course that means even more cutback measures. As a budget specialist, all I can say is that there must be no taboos. We have to cut everywhere. The belt has to be tightened everywhere, and that's not good news.
One thing's for certain, there'll be more Bundestag budget debates this fall.
When we continue, where is the best place to see the Berlin Wall? We'll give you a hint. It's not Berlin. But first, a look at stories making news this week in Germany. Stay with us.
The German cabinet this week agreed on further reforms to the state health insurance system in a move designed to reduce the cost of health care. Under the proposals, health insurance companies would no longer be obliged to pay for certain types of care, such as spa visits and prescription medicines. Insurers would also be allowed to raise contributions at regular intervals.
Germany's engineering industry moved one step closer to possible all-out strikes on Friday. Regional negotiators in Baden-Württemberg failed to agree proposed cuts to labor costs. Any deal would have become a pilot agreement for the rest of the country next year. But leaders of the IG Metall trade union refused to even discuss employers' demands for cuts in sick pay entitlements. The issue will now go to arbitration.
A court in Frankfurt sentenced a former member of the left-wing terrorist group, the Red Army faction, to life imprisonment. Birgit Hogefeld was found guilty on 3 counts of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. The 40-year-old was convicted of attempting to kill Hans Tietmeyer, now president of Germany's central bank, and of involvement in the 1985 bombing of a U.S. airbase in Frankfurt, in which a soldier and a civilian died.
Environmentalists protested the arrival in Hamburg of what's believed to be the first genetically altered soybean shipment to Europe. Between 1% and 2% of the U.S. cargo has been genetically altered. Greenpeace claims the beans may be a health risk and that consumers won't be able to tell if they're eating food using the processed beans.
Human rights in Turkey and Ankara's possible European Union membership topped the agenda of Wednesday's meeting between Turkish President Süleyman Demirel and German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Demirel, on the first Turkish state visit to Germany since 1988, said his country would continue to defend itself against terrorism. The two leaders also discussed the situation of the 2 million Turks living in Germany. Demirel's visit was dogged by demonstrations against Ankara's human rights policies.
A very important anniversary came and went Saturday without too many people paying notice. November 9th, 1989, jubilation and dancing in the streets. The hated Berlin Wall was breached. That led to the fall of the communist regime in East Germany and the reunification of the country. Now, 7 years after the wall, people are a bit more sober about the whole thing. In fact, it's hard even to find much of the wall left in Berlin for sightseeing purposes. Pieces have found their way to all sorts of places, like Poland. As you'll find out in the next report, it turns out to be an appropriate spot for the Cold War relic.
This Trabant, or Trabi, smashes through the Berlin Wall, symbolizing its demise, an artistic reminder of the fall of communism. What makes this collection so unique is that it isn't in Germany at all. Instead, it's tucked away in a small Polish village called Sosnówka near Wrocław. Veterinary surgeon Alexander Bazecki accumulated the fragments with the help of his brother Ludwig, who's lived in Berlin since the 1980s.
The mur upadał, już szło ku temu, że...
When the wall fell, and people had a new sense of hope that this symbol of separation would disappear from the face of Europe, my brother phoned me one day in Wrocław and suggested we start collecting parts of the Berlin Wall here.
So the brothers got down to business. They scoured auctions all over Europe, buying up individual pieces, creating eventually the largest collection of sections of the Berlin Wall in Europe. Despite attempts by overzealous customs officers to tax the pieces as building material, the collection took shape. Residents of the village were initially skeptical, but now they've grown to love their own chunk of world history.
Lots of people come to see the exhibition if the weather's nice or during school holidays.
Some people have said they've been to Berlin, but either they couldn't get close enough to the wall or they just couldn't find it. Here they can touch it and show it to the kids. It's a piece of history.
And it's free, day and night, on display throughout the year. But the Trabi is not. The Bazetskis lock it away every evening. It's one of the few pieces of East German handiwork that could still be resurrected.
Make sure. That's it for Compact. I'm Greg Palcott. For all of us at Deutsche Welle, thanks for watching and have a great week.
Cover most of France, Germany, and Poland. Southeast Europe and the Mediterranean are enjoying clear skies. It's cold in Helsinki at 3 degrees Celsius. Berlin and Paris can expect 10 degrees and Athens 20 degrees. There are scattered storm clouds along the equator as well as in the south from Angola to Johannesburg. Temperatures on the African continent range from 21 degrees in Algiers to 28 degrees in Kinshasa. Khartoum is feeling the heat at 37 degrees. There's heavy cloud cover from the Urals to the Caspian Sea and across Siberia. Expect rain in southeast China, Laos, and Vietnam. The rest of the Far East is clear. They're bundling up in Novosibirsk at minus 14 degrees, and it's a chilly 9 degrees in Beijing. Delhi, on the other hand, is enjoying a warm 32 degrees. The skies over Australia are mostly clear, with just a few showers over Tasmania and the coastal regions of Victoria. Perth is the hot spot on the continent at 36 degrees. Wellington, 15 degrees, rainy and cool, and the island of Tahiti has a warm and sunny 28 degrees. A thick band of clouds stretches from Canada's west coast to the American Midwest. Clouds, too, from Quebec to the Great Lakes, bringing snow with them. Anchorage is a wintry minus 8 degrees. New York has plus 8, and Chicago is right down the middle at 0 degrees. Clouds are bringing showers and storms from southern Brazil across Bolivia to Paraguay. Northern Brazil and Venezuela are mostly clear. Bogota and Lima will see 20 degrees, Buenos Aires 22, and Santiago de Chile 30 degrees Celsius.
Deutsche Welle TV, worldwide.
Someone out there needs help, and you've decided to save them. Every year, thousands of people die waiting for organ and tissue transplants. To be a donor, even if you've signed something, you must tell your family now so they can carry out your decision later. Otherwise, it's like throwing a 12-foot rope to someone who's 15 feet away. Share your life. Share your decision.
You are watching CAU TV, Partners in Education with WPBA Channel 30.
Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so I rise.
I've had the same friends since I was a little kid. But this year, some of them started playing with these other kids. I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's cool making new friends and all, but they weren't like us. They were, you know, different. And I heard my big brother saying some pretty bad stuff about people like them. But they seemed pretty cool, and we had a pretty good time. So, well, maybe my brother doesn't know everything.
Hey, Carlos, come on, we need you.
Don't be afraid.
Be your friend.
Straight ahead jazz music, it's the music that has to be definitely straight ahead. It has to have some swing, a lot of rhythmic movements. It's a serious art form. It's an art form that can be happy. It's an art form that can be sad, up and down. It all depends on the temperament of the musician who's playing it. But the bottom line is it has to swing.
You are watching CAU TV, Partners in Education with WPBA Channel 30.